The night sky over the Mediterranean was pitch black on April 14, 1986. The kind of darkness that swallows everything except the low, distant thunder of jet engines. And on that night, the United States Air Force and Navy were about to carry out one of the most daring, complex, and politically sensitive missions of the entire Cold War. Operation Dorado Canyon wasn't born out of a territorial dispute or a battlefield engagement. It came from something far more personal.
The attacks were concentrated and carefully targeted to minimize casualties among the Libyan people, with whom we have no quarrel. From initial reports, our forces have succeeded in their mission.
American blood spilled by terrorists linked directly to Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi. For years, Gaddafi had armed, funded, and encouraged groups responsible for bombings, hijackings, and assassinations across Europe and the Middle East. He bragged about his reach. He believed the West wouldn't respond. But when a bomb planted by Libyan agents ripped through a nightclub in West Berlin, killing 2 U.S. servicemen and injuring dozens more, Gaddafi finally crossed a line the United States could not ignore. President Ronald Reagan made the decision. Retaliation would come. Not symbolic, not limited. A strike powerful enough that anyone watching, friend or enemy, would understand what happened when you targeted Americans. But the target wasn't easy. Libya sat deep in the southern Mediterranean, ringed by radars, SAM sites, fighters, and a coastline armored with Soviet-built defenses. And because European allies refused to let American jets fly from their land, the mission had to launch from England, meaning the aircraft would have to fly thousands of miles at night at low altitude through multiple countries' airspace without being detected. The men flying the mission knew exactly how dangerous it was. The strike force included the F-111 Aardvarks from the 48th Tactical Fighter Wing, long-range, two-man aircraft built for deep precision strikes. Alongside them were the F-111 Ravens, electronic warfare aircraft designed to blind enemy radar and confuse missile systems. And complementing the Air Force attack were U.S. Navy aircraft, A-6 Intruders and F-A-18 Hornets, launching from carriers in the Mediterranean to hit coastal targets and suppress Libyan defenses. This wasn't just a mission. It was a military chess match played in the dark. When the F-111s lifted off from their bases in the United Kingdom, the sun had already set. The crews settled into their cockpits, strapped in for what would become one of the longest, most demanding combat flights of their era. These weren't young rookies. These were experienced air crews who understood that night flying at low altitude meant absolute focus, because just one mistake during the long descent to terrain-hugging levels could send them straight into the sea. They refueled mid-air over the Mediterranean, taking on fuel in total darkness, guided only by dim lights and muscle memory. Then they descended, down to just a few hundred feet above the water, flying so low the waves almost reflected in their control panels. They had to stay below Libyan radar coverage, which meant hours of flying at speeds pushing 500 miles an hour, with no lights, no margin for error, and no ability to climb without being detected.
First of all, we are the prime strike outfit for the Australian Air Force.
The EF-111 Ravens flew ahead of the main formation, using their advanced jamming systems to blind Libyan radars. These aircraft didn't carry bombs. Their weapon was electronic warfare, scrambling signals, confusing radar screens, and making American jets appear invisible. Then came the moment of truth. As the strike packages neared Libya, they split into their assigned routes. Each group knew exactly which target they were assigned: military barracks, command centers, airfields, and facilities tied directly to Libya's terrorist operations. The attack had to be precise, controlled, and deadly. The F-11Fs rolled in first. Their targets included the Azizia barracks in Tripoli, a key military and intelligence compound connected to Gaddafi himself. The attack was timed down to the second. The Aardvarks climbed slightly, just enough for their targeting systems to lock on, and then unleashed laser-guided bombs that streaked downward toward hardened structures. Seconds later, the night exploded. Multiple Libyan military sites were hit almost simultaneously. Fireballs rose into the sky over Tripoli and Benghazi. The concussive blasts rattled buildings miles away. Power flickered across parts of the city as American precision munitions smashed into anti-aircraft batteries, radar centers, and command hubs tied directly to Gaddafi's operations. At the same time, off the coast, the U.S. Navy made its move. From carriers positioned in the Mediterranean, A-6 Intruders and F-111 Hornets flew in at low altitude, launching their own strikes against Libyan missile sites and air defenses. The Hornets suppressed enemy fire, while the Intruders delivered surgical strikes on critical installations. Libya responded with everything it had: anti-aircraft guns, missiles, and scrambling jets. But the American pilots were ready. The F-111S jammed radar systems so effectively that many Libyan missile crews fired blind, launching SAMs into empty air or locking onto false targets generated by the jammers. Flares lit up the sky. Tracers stretched upward. Missiles streaked through the darkness, chasing shadows. But even with American expertise, technology, and planning, the danger was immense. During the strike, one F-111 Aardvark, call sign Karma 52, failed to return. Whether it was shot down or lost due to a mechanical or navigational failure in the chaos of evasive maneuvers remains uncertain, but both crewmen were killed. Their jet disappeared into the Mediterranean, swallowed by the same black water they had flown so low over just hours before. Their sacrifice became the most painful reminder of the risks the mission carried. Still, the operation was a success.
Colonel Gaddafi has made this happen. He has promised a ceasefire. He has broken that ceasefire. He continues to brutalize his own people.
By the time the last aircraft cleared Libyan airspace, multiple high-value targets had been destroyed. Libya's command infrastructure took significant damage, and Gaddafi, who had mocked the West for years, now faced undeniable proof that the United States was willing to strike at his doorstep. When the F-111s and EF-111s finally landed back in the UK after their marathon flight, the crews were exhausted. They had spent hours in cramped cockpits, flying one of the longest fighter missions in American history. But they had completed something almost unheard of at the time: a long-range nighttime precision strike carried out flawlessly across continents against one of the most heavily defended airspaces in North Africa. For your older viewers, especially the Cold War generation, Operation Dorado Canyon is remembered not only for its military success, but for what it represented. It was a moment when the United States proved that no dictator, no terrorist state, and no hostile regime was out of reach. The Soviet Union watched, NATO watched, the entire Middle East watched, and the message was clear: attack Americans, and a response is coming, possibly in the dead of night with bombs so accurate they'll hit your command center's front door.
The people of Libya must be protected, and in the absence of an immediate end to the violence against civilians, our coalition is prepared to act.
The mission also marked a turning point technologically. This was the first major demonstration of the U.S. Air Force's ability to conduct long-distance, nighttime precision strikes using laser-guided bombs. What the world saw over Libya in 1986 became the foundation for what the United States perfected just a few years later in the Gulf War. Stealth aircraft, precision targeting, electronic warfare, and deep penetration strikes that could dismantle an entire nation's defenses in hours. But back in 1986, the men on those planes weren't thinking about future wars. They were thinking about the nightclub bombing, the American lives taken, and the families who expected justice. They were thinking about the danger of flying low-altitude penetration routes at night, and the responsibility they carried to strike precisely, strike professionally, and come home alive. Operation Dorado Canyon lasted only a few minutes over the target, but the mission itself lasted hours. and the effect lasted years. Gaddafi pulled back. Libyan terrorist activity decreased, and the United States demonstrated a capability that adversaries still fear today. When the sun rose the next morning over Tripoli and Benghazi, smoke still curled from the ruins of military compounds. Libyan anti-aircraft crews were still shaken by the skill and speed of the American attack. And somewhere offshore, carrier aircraft were already returning to their decks, engines cooling, latching into their catapults, ready, if needed, to launch again. For the men who flew it, and for the generation that lived through the Cold War, El Dorado Canyon became more than a mission. It was a reminder of American resolve, a warning to every enemy watching, and a testament to the pilots and crews willing to fly into the blackest night at the lowest altitude against the longest odds, because their nation asked them to.